Welcome to the BA Coaches Show. I am the BA Coach. This is episode 4 coming out on May 5th, 2024. This is a big episode today. We got big things lined up here. Just walking through some of that. Got a big guest on today. But remember, hey, through these next couple weeks, all throughout May and June, we got coaches from all across the country, high school coaches, college coaches joining us today. But before I get into today's guest, here we go. Rev up your engines and join us at the annual Paola Heartland Car Show. There's something for every car enthusiast to admire. Come see the hottest rides on display and mingle with fellow car lovers. Don't miss out on this thrilling event. Mark your calendars now, June 8th on the historic Paola Square. Go check it out. But, like I said, big guest today. Today's guest is someone who honestly inspired me to get into podcasting, got me starting watching football coaches podcast in general. Today's guest is Daniel Chamberlain. Coach Chamberlain is going to be the new offensive coordinator at Salina High School in Oklahoma. He's got a really interesting background getting into coaching. So you guys are going to love getting to hear some of his story and some of the things he believes in. Coach Chamberlain is also the co-host of the Football Coaching Podcast and the Coaching 101 podcast. So go check out all his stuff. Like I said, Coach Chamberlain's awesome. He's the reason that this show exists. So be sure to go check him out. And hope you guys enjoy this one. Welcome, Coach Chamberlain, to the BA Coaches Show. I'm very excited to have you on here. This is one I've been excited for ever since I started that I was going to do a podcast. One of the first people I knew I wanted to have on was you. One of the things that inspired me to do a coaching podcast was the Coaching 101 podcast. I saw you on with Coach Simpson, and then I started seeing some of your other stuff, like the other pod, the football coaching pod, I think it's called. I've
It
checked
is.
out
Yep.
that a little bit, and so I've been excited to have you on. Like I said, I talked to you through Twitter DMs, quite a bit, and I'm excited. But first thing I wanted to say is congratulations on your new post over in Salina. That's
Hey,
pretty cool
man.
stuff,
I
man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been in defense for the first 4 years of my career, and I'm pretty pumped to just go get to make, like, defensive coordinators wrong. It's been I've been having to, deal with, yeah, just fascinating offenses, I'll just say, for the last few years, and I'm just ready to be on the other side and bring in the heat, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, that's So I'll say I was excited for you when I saw the new job, and then I saw offensive, and I said, "Ooh, that'll be interesting." Because I know you've been a defensive guy, so that kind of was interesting to me. Um,
Yeah, kind of my mentors in the game, Joe, Kenny Ridley,
mhm,
a guy that not so much on the airwaves. He was my DC in high school, and
yeah,
he's been a mentor for me growing up. They all basically said the same thing. It's like, if you want to learn one side of the ball, go to the other side of the ball as a coach first, right? And
yeah,
so it just kind of fit this year. It got to that point where it's like, okay, I know what defenses are trying to do. I know what rules most of them have to live by. I've seen a few different versions of, like, linebacker reads and defensive end play and coverages. Um, so I think I've got a pretty good understanding of each of those positions, and now it's time to just go make them wrong. That's kind of my call to arms is, make him wrong. And generally, obviously talking about outside linebackers or force players, but really anybody on the field. So it's going to be fun getting to take my knowledge, unfair probably, right? But getting to take the knowledge that I've accrued over the last 4 years, I guess, and using it against some DCs.
yeah. I'm excited to see that. So because of you, I've now figured out, like, so where I live in Kansas, I follow all the Kansas high school football stuff, right? Where my family lives, where I have family coaching and all that, I go and watch like Nebraska high school football. It's where I'm originally from. Now with you, I feel like I'm gonna start watching like Oklahoma high school football to see how you guys are doing. So I got like
Absolutely.
3 states that I'm checking out right now.
For sure, yeah, and you know what I mean. It'll only make you better because we're all going to do things a little different.
Yeah.
Specifically, I know we see a ton of 3-4 defense right now here, almost
Mhm.
like a 5-2. Usually, the outside backers walked up heavy. And then I talked to people from that Kansas, Nebraska, and like, oh, it's 4-2-5 all day. And
Yeah,
so,
that's what in Spring Hill we're switching to a 4-2-5 next year. We
yeah,
were like a 3-4 with outside backers walked up, just like you said, but we're switching to the 4-2-5 next year.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like it's just coaches following coaches. They see someone be successful. I'm really expecting to see some 3-3 kinda shine because of TCU, a couple
Yeah.
years ago made a run with that. Maybe Georgia putting it on them in the national championship game that year. Probably made some coaches second guess that, but,
Yeah.
it's just one of
Yeah.
those things. Coaches just follow success. Whatever's successful that year, people are gonna follow, and it's regional. I just
Yes.
really think
Yeah,
it's regional, so,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I'll say I was excited to have you on and just to get to know you a little bit more is I'd say you have, I mean, me as well, I have kind of a unique background into getting into the whole high school football coaching thing. And I know you do as well. So if you kind of want to, like, you can go back as far as you want to. Obviously, you've had a pretty big career in the military. If you want to walk me through that into how you got to where you're at right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so my origin story, if you will, it really starts in the 8th grade in biology class with Punnett squares, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is the time that Coach Kenny Ridley kind of first made his impression on me, and so, um, like I said, he was my DC. He ends up being the guy that I'm watching growing up that's basically my superhero. There's things that I do to this day that are 100% because of him. One, I'm a biology teacher. I'm a biology major. I have a biology degree. Those are all because of Coach Rid. Um, I started on the defensive side of the ball mainly because that's where I got put, but he was a DC, all his years until he became a head coach and kind of had to do both sides. And so that's really where my story begins is 8th grade and one and him talking Punnett squares, and it's still my favorite part of biology to talk about. But another story, and I've kind of told this on the air before, but walking from one building to the other, and I look down and there's a group of football players walking out of the field house, and there's a giant trash can tipped over and trash is all over the ground, and those kids all walk past it, and here comes Coach Rid walking from athletics up to a class, and he stops and picks up every piece of trash on the ground, turns that trash can back right side up, and gets it all cleaned up. And that stuck with me. And you can ask the guys that I've coached with, um, if you see me out and about walking to and fro and there's trash on the ground, I'm picking it up. And I took that to the military with me, and I've taken it into coaching with me. But it's that mentality of like you're never too big to do the little job. And so um, getting into the military, that I kind of took that mentality and like always kind of being there for your guys. And so, military wise, I've deployed a few times. I've seen Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, all the sandy places. Nothing. I'm no military hero. I've never, had to actually get into full on combat with the enemy. Nothing. There's superheroes out there that wear camouflage, and it is not Coach Chamberlain. Um, but I had fun. I did some things need to be done. We came home. Um, I came home that last time, and I was just really looking for my what am I going to be? I still don't know what I'm gonna be when I grow up. I don't think that us football coaches are truly
Yeah,
grown ups.
I'm
I,
right
I
there
still think
with you,
we're all
man.
yeah, like there's no way this is an actual job because we just get to have so much fun and it's
Yeah.
just ridiculous. Especially now I've added podcasting to the mix. It's like, what am I
Yeah.
doing? I'm living out like some people's dream and
Yeah.
it's all around sports. So but I really was in that kind of some ruts. Just I don't know what I'm gonna do when I grow up. But here I am. My wife Samantha and I. She's a physical therapist. She picked a route in life to help people still, and she just kind of made me look bad. Like here she
Yeah.
is, a doctor, and I'm just the guy that's kind of bouncing jobs.
Mhm.
And so once again, Kenny Ridley enters the picture, and he says, "Dude, you've got the heart." You've got the mentality to go help people. I think coaching is your calling. And so, I just gave it a shot, and that's it. Kind of landed me there at Wyandotte for my first job, and which happened to land me as a DC on day 3 of being a coach. And
Wow.
addiction ensued. Just there's no getting your life back once you
Mm.
are out there calling plays on a Friday night, trying to dissect what the enemy's trying to do and have an answer, and all the off-season stuff and podcasting. Man, just a snowball effect of addiction, and
Yeah.
my wife is probably tired of it. Um, but, I love it. I've not worked a single day, in football at least,
Yeah.
since, that fall of 2020 when I took my first coaching job.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I'll just kind of share some things with you. I've kind of told a little bit of this story on here before, but kind of how I got into coaching a little bit is I was junior in high school and found out like my season was just over before it even started. Right, I had like 4 or 5 concussions, and I, was obviously just completely crushed. Right, and there was
Right.
a whole bunch of other things just going on in my life, and it was not a great time for me. But I knew then at 16, 17 years old, I was able to look at myself in the mirror and be like, I'm not done with football yet. Like may not be on the field this year going into it, but like I'm not done with football yet. So we go through that whole year, and then going into my senior year and all that, I started after like high school stuff. After like high school, I started volunteering for like our youth team in
Right.
the small town I grew up in. And ever since then, I mean, I've coached football at some level ever since then. Like I haven't given it up at all. And even just coaching literally fifth and sixth grade football in small town Kansas, I was so hooked to it. I think surprisingly, I think I love coaching more than I did playing. And I love playing, don't get me wrong. But like
Yeah.
I have so much fun coaching every single day. And like you, I've never been able to say I I don't work. Like I do, but like I
Right.
enjoy it so much.
You
And
know,
it's great.
football is one of those things you absolutely can enjoy more than you coaching than playing because like I'll just 100% honesty here. I'm not a very good football player,
Hey,
right?
right there with
I
you, man.
was I kind of cracked the starting 11 on defense as a junior. Swapped reps with a kid that was under me in age
Mhm.
in class. So even in my senior year, like him and I played the same position and we split
Yeah.
reps. I was not
Yeah.
dominant. Like I always felt like I was, kind of swimming to keep my head above water. I never understood concepts and even what we were trying. I didn't know what defense we were in. Like Coach Reid has told me
Yes.
since, like, "Oh yeah, we basically ran a 4-2-5," and I'm like, "Really?" Because I had no idea.
Yeah.
So I wasn't very good. Like I walked on to play at a D2 East Central University, there in Ada, Oklahoma, and even then, like, I didn't know what cover 3 was, right? And I had already
Yeah.
I just was there 1 year and won because I wasn't very good, and
Yeah.
luckily, the DC there was very honest with me, like, "Dude, go away. You're wasting both of our
Yeah.
time. Go do something with your life." But I'd already kind of been broken by the military too, so I needed to get out of football. But when I
Yeah.
found coaching, it's like you get that understanding, you learn that big picture, but also you remember swimming and not being able to keep your head above water sometimes, so
Yeah.
you can dumb it back down for your
Yes.
athletes, right? I've seen that freshman still in my coaching days, and I'm like, "Okay, we need to be better about my DBs better know what cover 3 is," right? Because I had no
Yes.
idea. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, it's something you can enjoy more because you can be better at it. It's just one of the weird sports that
Yes. Yeah.
being a great player does not make you a great coach in football, and I know that
Mhm.
we hire NFL players and, D1 players to be coaches and expect them to be the best head coaches ever or the coordinators. It's different mentality, right? It's not the same. They're not the same job, if you will. So being
Yeah.
elite
Yeah.
on the field
100%.
as a player does not make you an elite coach, and you don't have to be that way to be a great coach. So,
Yeah.
um,
I can definitely relate to what you said. I remember. So I played wide receiver and like outside backer when I was in high school, and like it was very pretty easy for me. I didn't really have to understand football that well. At
right.
outside backer, it was set the edge, go get the quarterback. And the offense that I played in was like very much like power I. We're only throwing the ball like 4 or 5 times. So I'm like, I need to know slant and I need to know a go route. That's about it.
That's about it.
So like even going into that, that's why I'm honestly so grateful for those first couple years I coached, just like volunteering at a youth level. Cause even at that younger level, just being a coach, I was like, well, I have to understand like a lot more than just a slant,
Right.
or like how to set the edge. So like even though I obviously enjoy what I do now and like, moving up and going, coaching high school football, I also like am very grateful for those first couple years where I was volunteer coaching at a very low level of just learning everything, if that kind of makes sense.
No, absolutely.
So,
And
yeah.
that's being thrown into the fire as DC my first year. I mean, we went 4-4. There's games that were 100% on my back, and then there are on my
Mhm.
responsibility. there were times we played great defense, but it wasn't anything I did. It was just simplistic offense, let a very simple defense go to work, right? We lost blowout games. Matter of fact, I shouldn't have, but I looked at the Oklahoma records for total points in a game and point differential, and my team from that year is like number 20 on that list because it was 86 to nothing or something.
Yeah.
Right, we just got run rolled realistically. Would I have been able to change that if I'd had more knowledge? Maybe, but we were also outgunned, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're playing a D1 quarterback and a D1 receiver, and we had a bunch of kids that were not going to college to play football. So
Mhm.
um, it just is what it is. But
Yeah.
like you said, very thankful for that trial by fire. It quickly taught me what I didn't know. It taught me that you better
Mhm.
go find someone to teach you, and which led me to Joe Daniel and all the stuff that I do on the podcast side. So yeah, I'm absolutely grateful, like you said, to just have those that that year to figure it all out and learn what I don't
Mhm.
know. It
Yeah.
worked out well.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. So my like first like paid coaching job, right? I was coaching defense at a very tiny middle school close to where I live at. And when I say that we were terrible, hey, these kids that play in they're all in high school now. So like you guys aren't terrible now, but back then, if for whatever reason you're listening to this, you guys were terrible. Okay, I mean, it wasn't even a lot of their fault. There was a lot of like just the community they live in, like they didn't have a big youth football program, so like a lot of these guys are going out. This is their first time playing, right?
Yeah,
So that was a lot of life coaching lessons for me of being like, hey, sometimes you can and sometimes the best coaching jobs don't end up in the most amount of wins, if that makes sense.
I would say honestly, probably you're probably not going to have the most amount of wins, right? The teams that really
Yeah.
need you to be a great coach and the ones that make you a
Yes.
better coach, you didn't go out there and win. You probably competed, hopefully, but it's that
Yes.
introduction of fundamentals and like you're talking about middle schoolers that never played youth ball. That's kind of how we grew up
Yeah.
in Southern
Yeah.
Oklahoma. We didn't have Pop Warner or Pee Wee or any of that stuff. So when you stepped on the field and I want to say it's maybe like seventh grade or sixth, I don't know.
Mhm.
That was the first time you ever, put on
Yeah.
pads. So I feel you, man.
Yeah.
That's where coaches are most needed. Unfortunately, we all want to be up there at the big time,
Yeah.
coaching
Yeah. Yeah.
superstars.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. But yeah, I honestly think that I feel like all coaches should have experience coaching at like even if it's like a small high school level or going just because I feel like you learn a lot about the fundamentals of it or kids that are still trying to learn everything because it's like hey I may know a lot but if they don't know a lot it doesn't mean anything,
yep,
right? I can know 100 different offensive concepts but if they can't get down two of them it doesn't like what are we doing?
yes,
And that's something that I learned in I mean, I haven't, I mean, I'm obviously still a pretty young guy. But every year that I've coached, I've, taken big lessons away from that. That's something I'm grateful for at still being such kind of young and inexperienced. I was like, I'm still taking a lot in every single year. That's something that I've been really happy with.
yeah. I mean, I'm
Um,
only going into year 5, and
yeah.
I look last year, and I'm like, man, my install was terrible, right?
Hmm.
I screwed stuff up every single day as a coach. I look 2 years ago, and it's like, what was I doing? Especially if you go back to year 1, it's like, "Oh my god, like, I didn't even deserve to have a whistle." What it you know, I won't need to plug too many products here, but Joe has the Coaching 101, series, program, whatever, and it truly you need something like that for those introductory coaches because there is so much they don't know,
Hmm.
and in 3
Yeah.
years, you don't want to be looking back and be like, "I feel sorry for those kids because we just had no idea as coaches, and we wasted a year for them." They didn't know
Hmm.
it at the time. They will in a few
Yeah.
years probably be like, "Oh my god, my coaches were bad," right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, I think if you aren't looking back and identifying where you've become better, if you've grown stagnant, that's
Hmm.
a time that you need to really do some self-reflection because
Yeah.
the game isn't stagnant, and every year things change, right? And you talk to the
Yes.
best out there, and they're constantly adding to their philosophy or their fundamentals or their playbook. They're trying to get better somewhere, and so if you haven't identified where you got better last year,
Hmm.
it might be time to start kind of reaching out
Yeah.
and seeing what
Yeah.
you can learn.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always talk. So the best coaches that I ever talked to, all around. I've never had someone that I really look up to, and I think that they're great. Be like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing this so great for the longest time." What I always hear is, "Oh, I wish I would have started doing this 10 years ago," or "Hey, I really wish really wish I wouldn't have found out about this. If I could have known this, 5, 6 years ago, this could have been a whole different thing." And that's something that I think about quite a bit. Is the really good ones are never like, "Oh yeah, I got this thing figured out." You know
That's
what
right.
I mean? And I think that's a sign of a really good coach, at least in my opinion.
Oh, you're right, spot on, man.
Okay, so one of the questions, kind of going into some football stuff here. Um, so as we kind of touched on, you recently accepted I mean, recently, as in this season,
Yep.
um, the new offensive coordinator job. So you accept that you're going to a new school, right? What is your first move? What's the first thing that you're doing? I mean, get there, meet everyone. Like, what's the first thing on your checklist that you're checking off?
Yep. So, I'm not even because I still am a teacher, and
Hmm.
there's many people who kind of know of me, but I drive an hour and a half one way every day to go to my job. It was a
Hmm.
position I couldn't turn down because I got to go learn from one of the absolute legends in high school coaching, and that's Bill Blankenship, right?
Hmm.
I mean, the guy has 6 rings. He coached it. He's the head coach for Tulsa, University of Tulsa.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he's kind of done it all in our area, and he's absolutely a legend. And I got him on the podcast a few times, and eventually I was like, let's talk about a job. And so he brought me over and let me coach, right? And man, that was accelerant for my career. Absolutely great catalyst. I'm going to carry a lot of lessons out of that last year. But I also learned um, my at the time, 5-year-old, very young 5-year-old told me, "Hey, Dad, I wish you'd never became a football coach because I don't want
mhm,
you to have to go to football work anymore." And so other things I learned outside of the relationship with
yeah,
Bill Blankenship, right, is just that drive is extreme, and the
yeah,
time with your family is it can't. There's nothing more important than that. And so,
yeah,
um, yeah. So saying all that to say that I still have to drive to work every day until I finish up this
yeah,
semester, which we're
yeah,
getting close. I don't know when this comes out. I think it comes out tomorrow. So
yeah,
we've
yeah,
we've still got to like the 24th or something is our last day of
mhm,
school. And
yeah,
so I won't get to meet the kids until basically our first day of spring ball. The baseball
mhm.
team there is in first place in the state or something, so they're dominating, going to the state tournament. I think they finished playing the Saturday before our first day of spring ball on Monday. So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, we're cutting it close.
yeah,
We actually scheduled out because we knew they were going to be good. So my very
mhm,
first thing is I just let technology do some work for me. Number one, got on Huddle. We all have
yeah,
Huddle. It seems like anymore. Drew up some basic play stuff and gave it to the kids to look at installs. I got on Canva and drew up my entire offensive series, or my whole system, and that's gap scheme, zone, duo, all the pass concepts we're going to use, the tags, the formations, motions, shifts, etc. Right? I mean, we got everything in there. Um, and then I got on. We use Loom as a recording thing that Joe introduced me to because he does the
mhm,
um, uh, coach the game film analysis. That's what I'm trying. Man, I
mhm,
almost drew a blank. Game film analysis. So he goes and watches your game film from a week and records
mhm,
himself talking about how you could do better. And so I use that and I just recorded everything in my offense and I sent it out to the coaches and then made small versions send it to the players. So trying to get ahead of the game with install was my very first thing. The
mhm.
system we're going to use can be complex. Obviously, I've dumbed it down for year one at a new place,
Yeah,
and I think we're going to be okay there. So that kind of was step one. Um, Went to some baseball games. I went and watched these kids play because those relationships are very important. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
knew that
100%.
they need to know who I am. I don't want to show up and literally be the first time I've met them all. And
Yeah,
so I got out there, and the kids that are dual sporting got to meet them, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Like I said, we're still a week and a half or so away from doing our install. So the coaches have seen the system. The players at least have access to the system if they've had time to
yeah,
access it or get on there and look at it. And then some of them have met me face to face, and so that's
mhm,
that's kind of where I had to start. I'm going to use a very ugly get it all in method for spring ball. We're going to just see everything in the system and see what looks good. So the kids have at least seen it. Understanding we have 7-on-7 to work our passing concepts. We have
yeah,
have a scrimmage or so to to iron out our fall install and get the run game really rocking, and then just jump into our non-district in the fall. So
Yeah, yeah, I 100%. I really do think that getting a lot of that stuff put out on Huddle and getting that information to your players is a really key thing. That way, when you do walk out there on day one or whatever, you can even ask a question of like, "Hey, what's this? What are you doing here?" And a lot of times they'll know if they've, and you can also pay attention to who's actually been looking at that stuff,
that's absolutely correct.
and yeah, and while you are teaching it, they at least have some semblance of what's going on.
Yeah,
You're still teaching it and making sure they understand all the finer points, but it's not just a completely foreign concept to them. I think that's really important. Something else I was kind of thinking about this, and obviously I've never been in the position where I'm like moving schools to go be a new coordinator, but like here's something I don't know if you've thought how much of the offense that you want to run and do all that, how much do you tailor that to like your new squad? Like do you know a ton about them right now, like what they have, or because I think we all obviously as coaches adjust to our team's strengths, right? But
yeah.
if coming out of new school, you're kind of still trying to learn. So how do you balance that of like, here's what I want to do versus like, hey, they might do this a little bit better in year one, if that makes sense.
So this is where I think I differ from some coaches, and that is, I will 100% tailor what we do to what the kids can do. And
Hmm.
I think we all say we do that. But
Yeah.
I know there's coaches out there like, nope, I'm outside zone. That's what we run, no matter what. And those
Hmm.
coaches probably get really good at it and can make kids fit the system. We're going to be very multi so that we can figure out what the kids are good at. And that's kind of why my spring is going to be so heavy on install, because I want to see what can we do. Are we going to be a gap scheme team? Are we going to be a zone scheme? Can we throw the ball at all? Um, some ways I kind of identified what we need to hit first, what I expect to be what we're good at, is I just watched film from last year, right? I got on
Yeah.
Huddle.
Yeah.
I can go back and watch their games, kind of break it down, see what we have returning. Um, it's, getting to go and see, hey, we have a quarterback with some wheels is really nice, because I
Hmm.
know that in small high school ball, what's really hard to defend? Well, that's the quarterback run game, especially
Yeah.
when it's a boot or something, right? And it's really a pass
Yeah.
until you
Yeah.
cover it well, and then he can just let her rip.
Yeah.
Um, Having a young wide receiver that caught a whole bunch of touchdowns last year, I think 14 or 18 touchdowns or something. Obviously, another year better. Another year, he's big on the baseball team. Luckily, he's the kid that's reaching out to me like, Coach, I need the next play. What's the next install?
Mhm.
So that's good. We can see the O line was a little weak, so zone scheme probably not going to be for us this year. We're going to carry a
Mhm.
little bit of it and see if we can make
Yeah.
it work. But I know, um, one, those really long 5 read pass concepts, we're probably introduce them as 3 read and run.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're not doubling to anyone, so zone is going to be pretty tough, and we better use a lot of down blocks
Yeah.
and just take good angles and eliminate what those inside linemen, defensive linemen can do, and what those offensive linemen have to do. Um, the system that I'm going to be running is very split complexity, meaning my O line is going to learn essentially 3 plays. They're going to
Hmm.
have a zone understanding. It has one set of rules. They're going to have a gap scheme. Um, we're going to do power counter. We're going to install. We'll see what sticks,
Yeah.
but power counter, pin pull, duo. I teach as a gap with no pull.
Hmm.
So because I know that we can just tag that, I can almost
Yeah.
all power counter and then tag who actually is going to be pulling. So they get
Yeah.
to learn one scheme and like, oh, I'm pulling on this one, right? If you think
Hmm.
of buck sweep, it's just counter but changing the puller. So
Yeah.
we can talk about that. We can put them in buckets or containers. I love Joe uses containers. So um, yeah, so that's kind of what I did, man. Just watch a little bit of film, see what those guys did previously. They kind of did it all. I found
Yeah.
the glaring weaknesses, and we just try to fortify that with
Hmm.
our ability as coaches to change scheme around the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, something that our offensive new he's been here, but he's got promoted to offensive coordinator at Spring Hill. He'll hate that I'm even talking about him just because he's not a guy that wants praise, but something that he does really well. Curtis Myers, he put out like he made a like whole slideshow presentation and there's video on him of like him explaining this, did this. But something I really like that he did that I thought was kind of a unique touch is on like one of those first couple slides. It like had all the position groups and if you're offensive line, you click on offensive line. It's like these 9 slides are what you need to pay attention to.
That's awesome.
I thought that was awesome, and as coaches, obviously we're looking at the whole thing, but I thought it was really, and like his quarterback slides were obviously gigantic, but it's like wide receivers. Here's all of our passing it was just that kind of thing of just being able to. I thought that was something really good. Again, he'll
Yep.
hate that I'm praising him, but I think he did a really good job with all those slides he kind of put together of just being able to keep it as simple. It's like, hey, you're our right guard. You don't need to know all the things that our quarterback knows right now. We don't need to
Right.
try and, you have a hard enough job. I just need you to know what you're doing,
Yeah, that divide in complexity is big time.
yeah.
I think of it like our offensive linemen and defensive linemen if you're a defensive guy, but they're literally going to be they should be the most exhausted players on the field the entire time from
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
original snap. They are body on body, moving people around. And all those skinny kids in the back, they just are literally trying to avoid contact. That's their
Yeah.
job, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
sure, they may have to sprint a little ways,
Yeah.
and the O line maybe necessarily isn't sprinting, but would you rather sprint 80 yards and score a touchdown or move a 200 to 300-pound man,
Right. Yeah.
um, every play for a 12 play drive? Like,
Yeah.
what do you want to do here?
Yeah.
So making them not have to think as much.
Hmm.
Hey, I'm downing, I'm pulling, I'm zoning,
Yes.
or a pass set and having a single pass set,
Hmm.
pass protection. That once again, you can tag and move things around. That's just got to be what you have to divide that. Let those skill guys worry about all the slides and all the rules and all the pass concepts and
Hmm.
reading and all that good stuff. Them big boys just need to. I have very simple rules. I
Yeah.
move
Yeah.
mountains. I do it again.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and I'm in 100% agreement with you on that. So you're talking about we talked about kind of installing it with the players, right? You switching schools. You kind of talked about how you shared a lot of the stuff with all the coaches and all that. How do you go about not even just like I mean, if you're bringing in a new offense, you're teaching a whole new set of coaches that, I mean, maybe if they know of you, they don't know you. That makes sense.
Right.
How much do you balance the whole collaborating with them a little bit, trying to get some of their thoughts when you're still, like you said, you're not there every day. So how do you kind of
Well,
balance that? 'Cause I think that's something kind of interesting as well.
so, we're in a place where essentially the entire staff left. So there's
Okay.
one
Okay.
guy left that stayed. Um, and we're thankful to have him because, he's going to be our tie to the community. He's going to be our tie to the administration, to the kids. He was very well received by the kids. And so,
Mhm.
we're very lucky to have that coach sticking around. But what that means is that I don't have the offensive line coach from last year. So
Mhm.
I don't have the wide receivers, the quarterbacks coach. There's no one this guy's like DBs and what do you want me to do on offense?
I
And
gotcha.
so as an offensive coordinator, there's been no worry about butting heads or like, hey, this, can you please keep the formations the same name or any of
I,
that stuff because it's basically a clean slate.
that's good.
So my
That's good.
collaboration was really with the head coach. To be 100% honest, when I went to my interview, we had just kind of an informal, went to a restaurant,
Mhm.
had a meal and talked. And I was interviewing for the DC spot.
Mhm.
And then I pulled up my Canva and was going through the system and my offensive stuff may have popped up first. And he was just like, "Oh, you've got some ideas on offense." And then as we went through the evening, he's like, "Would you rather just call the offense?" And I was like, "Yes." I'm I'm tired of being on defense, right? I'm ready to go to work. And so he let me. So the collaboration has been him basically
Mhm.
saying, "Keep it simple for." Unfortunately, we're in our area of the state, we're at like 50% IEP right now.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
and that's something that I, as an educator, am very shocked by, and I'm upset that we've let it come to that where we just tag IEPs to everyone,
Preaching to
but,
the choir here, man. I work in
um
special education. I get it.
yeah, and so he basically said, 50% of the kids, all 100% of them have to be able to
Yeah.
understand. So simple for 100% of them, not simple for me and you as a
Yeah.
coach, right? So that's been my
Mhm.
collaboration. Like, you're kind of free reign. He approved the system, approved the tags, promised he'll get busy learning it. Hands off, do your job. Um, Keep it simple enough for the kids to understand. So that's really been the collaboration. I've worked with the coach that's staying on staff to just understand where were we weak, what did we do good last year, what did we do bad, um, what teams do we have to really worry about this year on schedule, which Oklahoma just redistricted like last
I
week.
actually
We
saw
we had
that
a big
on your Twitter feed or whatever. I was actually
yeah, we
just
had a
looking.
big
Like I said, mostly because of you. I've been looking at the Oklahoma stuff, so I did just see that.
yeah, you can do the research on it. Essentially, we had a success rule for private
Mhm.
schools because that's something we still deal with is they're in our playoffs
Sure, dude.
for better or worse.
It's
I
yeah,
honestly right now I don't have an
yeah,
opinion. We'll just see how it plays
yeah.
out.
Still,
Um,
still a big thing going on in
they
Kansas
were having
as
to
well.
bump up a
So
lot of classes. There was a
yeah,
lawsuit. Now they only bump up one
mhm,
class, I think. And so we all had to
yeah,
redistrict right here in the middle of spring. So, um, but yeah, I mean, we're still pretty regional. We got a lot of the same teams on the
yeah,
schedule. It's not that big of a deal for us. We're low enough that didn't really hurt
yeah.
us. But yeah, that's been the collaboration so far. And I kind of went into it. I watched their film. Once again I saw what they did,
Mhm.
and so I've kind of been told in my career that like if you go in, don't change the name of the formations, don't change the name of the run play. It's better for you to learn a new terminology than 50 kids. But I'm just going to go the other way, and I'm going to go, hey, this is what you called soldier last
Mhm.
year. This year's going to be gun,
Yeah,
right? Like, it's it's the same concept.
yeah,
If my best 11 can learn it, or my best
yeah.
15, we're going to be
Oh,
okay
I'm
until the rest of them
100%
catch
with
up.
you, and I think at some points, I mean, we always try and keep it simple for the kids, but I also think a lot of our kids are smarter than sometimes we give them credit for. Especially if you're like, hey, you did call
Well,
it this, we're calling it this now. I don't think it's going to be a huge thing for them to try and figure out. And I have also heard that
yeah,
same thought as well of keeping it the same name, but I'm like. As long as you're not switching it like mid-season, I think it'll be okay. I think our kids are going to be just fine.
yeah. You know, Coach Ridley told me when I took my first job, and I kind of discussed with him, like, I'm overwhelmed. The
Mhm.
kids are overwhelmed. Like, when do I pull back? And he basically told me this. He said, whatever you expect them to learn is what they will learn. When you lower your expectations, you are the one that's hindering your program. It's not the kids. If you expect them to learn it and you can coach it to that standard, they're going to learn it. So don't
Yeah.
shortchange yourself or your season or the outcome, your system, just because sometimes I think we can get carried away with this keep it
Mhm.
simple thing to where it's like, do you just want to go run base cover three every snap? Because that's what OCs are
Right?
hoping you do. If I watch you run one
Yeah.
coverage all season, baby, well,
Yeah.
let's go. Because I can make a kid
Yeah.
wrong pretty quick. If I'm having to figure out what you do and then try to
Mhm.
make a kid wrong, so keep some complexity. What you expect them to figure out is what they're going to figure out.
Okay. So, hey, I just want you to know as we keep going on here, you're freaking killing it right now. You're doing great. This is exactly what I was wanting. Uh, so just some overall kind of football offensive things. What do you consider to be the most important qualities of a successful offense overall?
Own
Mhm.
the line of scrimmage,
Yeah.
offense and defense. If you're not owning the trenches, you're losing the
Mhm.
game. Period. And being able to run the ball in high school, especially down, like, I'm going to what we call now
Mhm.
small 2A, which is the third smallest 11-man
Yeah.
class. But if you can't run the ball, you're going to lose a lot of games. I don't care if you can throw it, like the greatest show on turf, St. Louis Rams. It doesn't matter. You're going to come to a situation where it's 4th and 1, 4th and 3, games on the line, seasons on the line, and you've just got to own the trenches
Yeah.
and be able to run the ball. So I think
Yeah.
that's where it starts. I think it's really cool that we've got 7-on-7 as a thing, and we can all get better at passing the ball because it
Yeah.
makes football fun, right? Big part of my philosophy on recruiting the hallways is you better have a system that's fun. And I know that I've already been hit on Twitter with the, what's fun is winning 14 games a year and in the wing tee. Well, you're right
Yeah.
for you. But those wide receivers aren't having as much fun as you think. They're out there because it's
No,
successful, but
I'm with you. I'm
they
with
want to
you.
catch the ball. I wish we had a run game thing. I wish there was a 9v9
Hmm.
tournament where we
Yeah,
could go
right.
out and just run the stinking ball. Obviously, it does not make sense logistically, or you're going to have too
Yeah.
many injuries, et cetera, et cetera. But I wish there was a way we could make running the ball something you could
Yeah.
practice all summer and not count against
Yeah.
practices or whatever. I just think it'd be a lot of
Yeah, I
fun.
agree.
So, but that's got to be it. I think if you can't control the line of scrimmage, you can't run the ball. I don't care what offense you're in. You're gonna run out of
Oh, I'm
bullets eventually.
100% with you. I think with all the fun stuff that's still going, all the fun new trends going on in high school football, I still think it's like, hey, can you run the ball? Can you stop the run? If you can do those, I think you can be successful. Now, there's obviously going to be some outliers, maybe like, but I don't think that's going to be a sustained type of thing. Like, okay, you might be able to have a year of that, but I still think building a program is like, can you run the ball? I'm not saying you have to do it all the time, but can you run the ball? Can you stop the run? So in Spring Hill, we run like a hurry up spread offense. Get as many plays as we can. Offense coordinator, he really likes to throw the ball, but at the end of there's a few stats that we always look at. Post Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and I've done some things, kind of putting our stats together of different trends we do of the stats we look at. First two we look at are the turnover battle, rushing yards, and then the other ones is like explosive plays, 20 plus yards. Well, we always look at turnovers because I'm a big
Yep.
guy. One of my biggest things I'm always harping on is win the turnover battle. It's a pretty good indication of where you're going to be. But honestly, when we've looked at it, the rushing yard battle has honestly kind of been one that's kind of right there with us. Is like the percentages of games we win versus when we win the rushing battle has kind of been spot on with that as well. And I thought that's been kind of interesting because, like I said, we're a team that hurry up, thing the ball. We're not maybe necessarily always known for that, but it's like, hey, we win the rushing battle. Won 80% of the time, we won 80% of our games. It's like, it's kind of a
Yeah.
crazy thing to look at. So I'm still a big believer on that as well.
Yeah, I love those post game. Like, what
Yeah.
do you look at? Because I personally really like to look at. You said explosive plays, but
Yeah.
negative plays
Yeah.
is a big one for me, and
Mhm.
efficiency. Last year I got into efficiency like none other, and I was just like, this is it just
Yeah.
opened your eyes. Like, I literally just need to get 4 yards on
Mhm.
first down, and we're
Yeah.
gonna win this game. If I don't get 4 yards on first down,
Yeah.
what on earth are we
Yeah.
doing? So, like, we're gonna end up losing or at least having a less of a chance to win that game. So, yeah, man, that's
Yeah.
I love what you said there. The things you look at to try to pin to a win
Yeah.
is
Hey,
pretty
and
neat.
like and I know I just said, but I'm very big on of turnovers and takeaways. And I've looked at the numbers from all of college football. I've looked at individual teams. I've looked at our high school teams, and I'm like, to me, I mean, everyone has their own opinion on that. To me, I felt like that's been like the number one stat that I kind of look at, especially over like a couple seasons of stretches. It's like I feel like that's a pretty good indicator to me. That's just my personal thoughts. Um, so as
For
we
sure.
kind of, start kind of plugging towards the end here, you've obviously been a guy that's been, you've advanced your career quite a bit. Like I said, I'm a young coach, so I'm very interested in your answer here. What advice do you have for young coaches that are wanting to advance their careers?
Um, if you don't know,
Hmm.
hire an expert, and I think that's the answer for head coaches. I think that's the answer for athletic directors. I think that's the answer for superintendents. In every aspect of every profession out there, if you don't know, hire an expert. And I cannot sing the praises enough of JoeDanielFootball.com. I got into it needing to learn defense. I literally found it because I searched what is the best high school defense, and the 4-2-5 popped up. This is after my 2020 season, my first year. We're
Hmm.
4-4. Like I said, we lost. I think it was 81 or 86 to nothing a game. I didn't know what I was doing, and so I looked to just go find some help. And I ended up in Joe's system, and luckily I ended up being able to podcast with the guy and stay in that system. But Man, that has absolutely been a catalyst
Hmm.
to my knowledge, my career. It that system, I say, advanced me 10 years in about 2 years. So, when I sit in a room with guys who've been on the job, learning every year the old-fashioned way, just being in football, about 10 to 12-year mark is where I feel like I have the same
Hmm.
amount of knowledge. There's, of course, guys that have been at it way longer that have still so much more football knowledge, but that's kind of where I'm at. So if you really want to advance, if you want to, it starts with your
Hmm.
football IQ, and you've got to go out and learn. And unfortunately, for free, there's not a lot of guys who have the time to sit around and help
Hmm.
you learn that all. But when you can go out and get a good system that's put together, Kenny's gun tee system is a great one for offense. I think he's got the 3-4
Hmm.
swarm. Joe, everything, pistol power offense. The Joe Daniel football system, of course, has got every
Yeah.
defense you can think of. Um, X's and O's wise, go hire those guys and let their product teach you. And then, the rest of it is just being very humble, staying locked in. You don't have to grind
Hmm.
anymore, I don't think. Um, I'm pretty bad about still doing that, but I football 12 months
Yeah.
out of the year, right? With two podcasts to
Yeah.
record every week and constantly trying to I'm like producing
Hmm.
content now and writing articles. All of that stuff that I do has made this an all year job, but I'm not grinding
Yeah.
installs. I'm not grinding defensive line play all year long. I get to play in the entire realm of football. So I even keep the burnout from happening on
Yeah.
myself. Um, but I think that's the answer. If you don't know what you're doing, which is odds are you don't, look, you're DC. Okay, let's say you're the cornerbacks coach and you want to learn all defense, right? You're trying to advance. Your DC also
Hmm.
did what you did. He started at one position. He knows it really well. He skimmed the surface on the rest of the positions until he knew it enough that he could put some concepts together and got a DC
Hmm.
job. Um, so he's going to be able to help you with his position, and then he's going to help you skim the surface
Yeah.
on the other ones. That's not what you need. You need to learn in depth all of those positions to take that next job and be very successful at it. And that's where these pay to learn programs come in. If you go get Joe's stuff right now, look, I can
Hmm.
coach every position on defense. Period. It's the system is so in depth. You learn technique, you learn concepts, I mean just everything there is, installs and drills and everything you need to be successful at every position. And that's where you get to move up to
Yeah.
a coordinator. And um outside of that, man, I think just finding
Hmm.
mentors, find those guys that will do it for free. They will take you
Yeah.
under their wing and teach you, even if it's kind of indirectly. I talk about Bill Blankenship hiring me and letting me come coach at Owasso with him for a year. I was a volunteer varsity coach
Hmm.
last year. Um, Kind of had to swallow my pride and be like, oh, well, I'm not a varsity coach. That's absolutely okay. I got to work a full
Hmm.
defensive install on the freshman side as the DC, and then show up and learn O line under one of the best O line coaches
Yeah.
I've ever met. And I was like his second assistant,
Yeah.
out there learning that stuff. So find those mentors, find the guys that don't mind letting you
Yeah.
pick their brain. Kenny Ridley's one of mine. Kenny Simpson has become one of mine. Joe, um, and then be a mentor to someone who
Hmm.
knows less than you. So, Tyrell Shelley is a coach that I worked with at Stillwell 2 seasons ago, and he was just like a volunteer dad on staff. Right? He just wanted to help. His son was on the team, and then come to me and was like, "Hey, I really want to know more ball," and so I get to teach, which of course teaching helps you
Yeah.
get better. And so once you have anything ironed out, start teaching the next guy
Yeah.
that anything and then add to it, because as you teach, you'll get better at it. You'll realize where you don't know and have to go, I know I'm trying to teach you linebacker reads, but I really don't know what to tell you right here. Right. I'm
Yeah.
going to go figure
Yeah.
that out. And so that information going up and down, that mentorship chain will help make you a better coach. That's where people like Coach Collins has fit into my life. He was my head coach at Stillwell. I learned from him, but I also got to pass him ideas in that same season. I got to be kind of an
Hmm.
analyst for him and giving him a solid foundation to reach out on Friday night. Like, Chambo, what the hell we do here? Also, when I'm picking his brain, like, what are we going to do against this
Hmm.
scheme this weekend? So passing that, and that worked into kind of a two-tiered mentorship
Mhm.
for both of us all season long, on the field and off the field. So I think that's what it is. Pay for what you don't know. Go let an expert teach you. Find great mentors that are better men than
Yeah,
coaches
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
even, but learn both sides of that, and then start teaching
Mhm.
someone what you know. Be a mentor
Oh,
to
I
someone.
100% agree with that entire thing. Something that I've really figured out is like kind of like you said of like have those mentors, and honestly the biggest ones that I've connected with obviously helped me out a lot with the football side, but they've also helped me out a lot like as people like as a man, right? And that's something that, has
Right.
really got me. Well, the ones I'll end up throwing out there is so after the 2021 season, I was leaving the school I was at, and I didn't know. I knew obviously was still going to coach, but I'm like, I don't know what the next step is, right? And Coach Brown over at Gardner Edgerton was like, hey, run our entire youth program over here. You want to come help us out with this? And then I ended up being a volunteer assistant, being up in the booth on Friday nights at the high school, and we ended up with a run
Right.
all the way to the 6A state championship. That was a really cool. Yeah,
Let's
that was a
go.
really cool experience for me. That's something I'll never forget, and that's the type of person that I mean, I'm obviously still pretty young, but like as I continue to grow my coaching career, is I want to be that guy for somebody else of hey, just getting to
Yep.
build connections and being like, hey, this guy needs me right now. I'm gonna do whatever I can to not only bolster him up as a coach, but also as a man. And that's the type of thing, and that's what I'm really happy about a lot of the coaches I have in Spring Hill that I coach with in Spring Hill right now is they're like, I want to help you be a better person. And I'm like, hey, here's some of the mistakes I've made in my life, coaching wise and just in life wise. You know what I mean? And like, and that's something that I, have taken to heart. And I think if I do ever end up, I mean, eventually I like to build my coaching career. And at some point, I'm going to end up leaving Spring Hill High School, right? It just at some point, and that's going to be one of the hardest things. Is there's been a few guys there that are, however long that is down the line, it's like, man, you really helped me through some really tough things, as a person. And I think that's really big of just having those mentors that you can have for life, So I'm in 100% agreement with you on that. So yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah. As we kind of wrap this up here, I just kind of want to talk about your little podcasting you do. How did you end up doing, the two podcasts that you do? How'd you get into that?
so like I said earlier, I bought into the Joe Daniel football system in late 2020, like December 2020. We just finished 4-4. We had a reduced season because of COVID. Um, we got to the playoffs because that year they let everybody be in the playoffs in Oklahoma because so many
Hmm.
teams were sitting out due to COVID. Kind of got our teeth kicked in, and I had that aha moment of I better go find some
Yeah.
stinking football knowledge. And so I, being a premium member with the Joe Daniel football system, you get emails
Hmm.
from Joe that are just
Yeah.
educational stuff, really. And he reached out with an email to everybody in his list and said, looking for a co-host. Basically apply here. And I sent him an email, and I started it with, "Here's all the reasons you should not hire me. I'm brand new to the sport. I know absolutely nothing. I'm buying your system because I don't know how to coach football. I've been away from the game for 10 years, minus this one season." And then I said, "Here's the reason you should hire me. I already have a podcast set up. My
Hmm.
wife and I had decided we were going to try to just talk about we have a little
Hmm.
homestead here, goats and chickens and such. And we were like, we're going to record our garden and our animals and just have fun. But we never really got around to doing it. Um, and so, that was another thing I had on the list. Like, I'm a biology major. So if it's research I need to do for the show, I can do research. I know how to
Yeah.
research stuff. I want to tie it to science, blah, blah, blah. So I just went on and on with these lists of things that why he should hire me. And he reached out and said, great, show up at this time on Zoom and we'll see if it clicks. And I thought, cool, I'll get the interview and talk. No, it was our very first episode ever. So it was, I think, the beginning of season 10. Please don't go back and listen to me back then. Okay. It took me 50 episodes to
Yeah.
find my groove and quit stumbling over my own words. And I learned Hal Mummy's name. There's literally an episode where I didn't know Hal Mummy's name, which I'm embarrassed to see. But um, yeah, man. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And that was summer of 21, I guess. So I'm going on 3 years doing that show. And then Kenny Simpson had come on a couple times to the show just as a guest and talked some RPOs and talked about offense. And kind of in the world where you sell football content, you generally pair with these other coaches that sell football content because you need someone that's well spoken. You
Mhm.
need someone who knows what we're trying to talk about, and that you like to give them a place to plug their stuff. So, um, eventually, Kenny reached out to me, and this was what we started just over a year ago. April of 23 is when we started. So probably February of 23, he reached out and was just like, "I really like to start a podcast, and do you know anybody that would like to join me?" And I was like, Kenny, I'm pretty offended that you're not asking me to do that. And he was like, "No, this is
Yeah.
actually me asking you. I just know that you're already with
Yeah.
Joe, and I didn't want to step on any toes." I'm like, "Okay, I can accept that answer." And so, um, Joe being the guy who got me in, just talked to him about it. Like, I'd like to do 2 shows, and yeah, man, just that's an
Mhm.
awesome idea, and kind of help me, because he understands that he grew a
Yeah.
brand. I need to grow a brand. My brand growing helps his
Yeah.
grow more. The same it will with Kenny. And anyway, and so yeah, I jumped on and helped Kenny get started. I'd already been I never edited video for Joe, but I understood
Mhm.
how to use the Adobe suite kinda, and so I kinda took all that on, and one that lifelong learner mentality I have, I jumped in and learned how to do more, and so I just that's kinda how it
Mhm.
ended up happening. Just a random email from Joe got me in, getting to meet coaches and learn ball, and I guess being well spoken and well read kept me in, and here we are, and I have more fun doing that
Yeah.
than basically any other job outside of coaching itself. There's no better way to make money than talking ball with coaches twice a week.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, like I will tell you, is you and Kenny Simpson's podcast is literally what had the idea click in my brain of being like, hey, it may not be like where these guys are yet, but like I want to do this. Like I want to be able to like sit down and have a conversation with guys like you. And that also will, I feel like, help me be better as a coach and as well, and talking with a whole bunch of different guys. So I'll just tell you that like the reason that the BA coaches show is a thing is because of you guys. So I would like to thank you for that.
Well, yeah, man, I appreciate that, and that's why we do it. Is the We want to pass on knowledge. We want to pass on that. I love
Yeah.
football, and I actually had someone tell me that recently. Is like, I can hear it in
Hmm.
your voice every single show. You literally love
Yeah.
what you're talking about. You're not being drug on
Yeah.
the mic. Um, but we want to inspire other coaches. I've had military members that have reached out to me and be like, "Dude, you've inspired me because of your work with 2 shows, and you're a National Guardsman, and you have all these other full-time jobs. Like, you inspired me to get into the National Guard as a football coach." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's awesome, right?" We want coaches bettering themselves. You talked about, just the fact that you made
Hmm.
a podcast. I have had other people kind of ask me that same question: should I start a podcast? Yes. Number one, we already discussed, how do you get better as a
Yeah.
coach? You teach others. So if you have to get in front of a mic and put
Hmm.
yourself out there to the public every week, and it's teaching something. Look, imposter syndrome is real. Number
Yeah.
one, I still have it. When I go into a room of football coaches, I still have imposter syndrome. Like, do I actually know football? Because these guys are talking about some
Hmm.
way deeper
Yeah.
stuff, right? So it's real. And when you get on a mic and talk about football, you will have that time where you're like, maybe that's not right. Is someone gonna email me and be like, "Dude, you're
Hmm.
completely wrong about linebacker reads, or you're completely wrong about O line play"? I don't know, right? That's part of it, but you're gonna get better because you're gonna make sure that what you say is solid, at least makes sense fundamentally. So it's gonna make you a better coach. The other thing, and here's, if you're considering as a coach that's listening to this, like, should I start a podcast about anything? I don't care if it's the best way to adjust a carburetor, right? I don't care if it's the best way to mow your grass. Whatever your thing is, should you start a podcast? The answer is overwhelmingly yes. And here's how it was put to me and why I continue doing it. And would you like to think about your grandparents, or maybe your great grandparents, right? A lot of us right now, our grandparents were kind of
Hmm.
boomers, so they lived through, or they came about because of World War II, or served in World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, stuff like that. But that's who we still kind of consider as our
Yeah.
heroes, right? As that generation. How cool would it be if you could just get on the internet and listen to your
Mhm.
grandfather tell stories for an
Yeah.
hour at a time. Learn who they really are. I've got pictures of my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents. I don't really know who they were as
Yeah.
humans. I know of a couple pictures where they may have been forced to take a picture with their family, or maybe they actually loved their family.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just a picture in time. But if I could log on the internet and listen to my great-great-grandparents talk about their
Mhm.
hobbies, talk about how they made the best moonshine ever because prohibition kept them from having a drink, or, maybe it was their days of plowing fields
Mhm.
by horse. Maybe it was, the way that they hunted back then wearing stinking flannel, right? Nowadays, we're all into this technical camouflage gear. Whatever their hobbies were, how cool would it be to just go listen to them talk about it for an hour at
Yeah.
a time and learn who they were as humans? So that's why I keep with it, and that's why I always tell everyone, do it. I have a 5-year-old that's in there giggling. You've probably heard him a couple times. I have a 2-year-old. My 5-year-old understands this is work. He doesn't understand
Mhm.
what I do. He's just learning who I
Yeah.
am as a human
Yeah.
and as a man, right? He's gotta get into that awakening age of, like, I understand the world. My 2-year-old has no idea
I
what's
also
going
have a
on.
2-year-old. Yeah,
He's
100%.
right, he's, like, riding his little
Yeah.
boogie board bike. We got him a balance bike, and he wants to go jump in the bounce house, and he wants to go feed the animals because his life is in these little bitty chunks
Mhm.
of life. But someday they'll be able to log onto the internet and listen to dad for
Yeah.
an hour at a time for 3 to 20 years, however long I am doing this, talk about what literally made him happy on earth as
Yeah.
a job, and that is football. And then like we did do a little bit of podcasting for bourbon. I'm a coffee snob, a beer snob, and a bourbon snob, and so he can go listen to what did dad actually
Mhm.
think about beer, and what did he think about the goats and raising a garden? What's some key things I can
Mhm.
take away from having a healthy garden this year? What's his favorite pickle
Yeah.
recipe? Or these are all things that he can go back and learn. Both of them can go back and learn, and my great grandkids can go back and learn. So, if you're thinking about getting online and teaching anything, I don't care what to do it, and your your ancestors will thank you later.
I've never, like, had it put to me that way, and I that might be the best answer you've had. You've had a lot of good answers today. Like, that might be the one that I'm like, "Whoa, that's, like, hitting me deep." You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
yeah, I've never really thought about it like that, and that's really awesome. Um, so yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming here today. That's all I had for you. If you wanna kinda just plug where we can find where can we find you on social media, and where plug your podcast, anything you wanna plug right now.
yeah, man. So I do kind of a lot. There's a lot of places you can find me. Number one, you can find me on the two podcasts. So the football coaching podcast with Joe Daniel, I think is the
Mhm.
actual formal title. I can't get him to change it. Joe, if you're
That is,
listening
I
to this,
went and looked, that's the title.
me well, here's the deal is he's Joe and I'm Daniel, and his
Fair
name is
enough,
Joe Dan so
fair
I just
enough.
pretend there's an M. And so that's the number one place to find or, that's one of the podcasts. The other one is the football coaching podcast. I'm sorry, the
Mhm.
Coaching 101 podcast, and that's me and Kenny Simpson. Both of those are weekly podcasts. You can find, the first one on Thursdays. Every Thursday, we release an episode, and the other one comes out on Sundays. If you want to be a guest on any of those, hit us up. If you know a
Yeah,
little bit of ball, we'd love to just get on and talk. Once again, just we like to educate, we like to be educated. So jump on over there. Athleticspeedandmovement.com is a place that you can go and learn the system we use to make our athletes faster and more agile. It comes from a guy that's been doing it for 45 plus years, Dell Basquet. Um, Great place to go learn how to make your team faster. ChamberlainFootballConsulting.com is a brand new website that's not even so when this comes out, it will not
mhm,
be live. But as if you're listening to this
yeah,
in a week or so, it should be good to go. That's where I'm going to put all of my stuff, my
mm,
portfolio, the podcast, just
yeah,
who
yeah,
I am as a coach, stories, maybe have a little blog on there. So those are places you can go find me. Twitter, I'm at Coach Chambo OK. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I don't really
yeah,
use those things that much, so Twitter's where I'm pretty
yeah,
active. Yeah, man, just reach out any of those places, and I would love to talk ball. I mean, if you have a podcast, you want me to come on, I'm more than welcome or more than happy to come on and do that stuff with you. I just like talking football. We've got some other things shaking. Looking maybe to start a
mm,
Patreon. So maybe that's something that you can find in the near future. Just it helps me as a guy that's a content creator. I'm not teaching next
mm,
year, so I have decided to step away from the teaching role and just coach, which means I have to put out a lot more football stuff to make
Yeah. Yeah,
money.
fair enough.
But what that will just come with most likely is just getting to hang
Yeah.
out with me more, and that'll be some
Yeah.
other social media platform or something. So those are all things you can kind of look forward to in the future. Um, yeah, man, that's really it. That's
Hey,
where I'm at.
well, like I said, thank you again for joining us. When I started this, you were one of the guys that I knew I wanted to have on. I have some other episodes. I'm starting to kind of get some of those, reaching out to coaches. Got a few college coaches coming on here in the next couple weeks, but I'm like, need to talk to Chamberlain. Need to get him on. He's the one that I really. You were
Well,
literally one of the
Ben,
first
I'll
ones
tell
I
you this,
wanted.
man. Like, well, I appreciate that, and it really is an honor to be even thought of as like the guest I want to have, because I'm just like anyone else that meets the guy they look at.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
humans, right? And that's what's so cool about growing up is Kenny Ridley is
Mhm.
just a human to me. Like he's still my
Yeah.
mentor and my hero, but I know he's a human like the rest of us. He has everyday problems just
Mhm.
like the rest of us, right? These guys aren't untouchable. And getting to meet Bill and just everyone I've gotten to talk to and get to know over, you just realize that
Yeah.
I'm just a dude. So I would love to, I'm going to make the same follies, the same mistakes as you, and I've learned from them, hopefully, just like you did. Ben, I'll tell you, man, I'm very, very grateful that you even had me on the show. I know that you're starting this thing off and trying to get it off the ground, and I wish you all the success in the world.
Yeah.
Start a
Yeah.
podcast because it is one of the coolest ways to just long
Mhm.
format
Yeah.
conversation. There's no rules. There's just come on and talk ball and listen to me ramble on way too long about stuff. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate getting to come on the show, dude. I'm proud of you for getting to jump up and do this, and especially because how old are
I
you?
am
You're mid 20s or
24
something,
years
right?
old.
Yeah. So you know what I was doing at 24? Probably trying to drink myself to death in college or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So you're already leaps and bounds ahead of where a lot of people are, and this will just advance your career that much more. So, man, I'm proud of you for just jumping into
Yeah.
this world and deciding like I'm going to put myself on
Hey,
display
I
for
do.
everybody.
I appreciate that. My goal with this podcast, okay, not my goal. One of the goals I have is to get this thing grown up enough a bit. And one of these days, I want to go on one of your podcasts and just like, once I bring something of value to
And you,
you guys, just be able to go on there and like, hey, share a little bit about me. As this podcast goes on, at
yeah,
some point, I'm going to share a bit more of my life story. Right now, I've kind of kept that with
yeah,
some of just the guys, right? The guys I coach right now, they got a big speech from me last year, before we played my hometown. And one of these days, I'm gonna get this thing built up enough to start going on other podcasts. I do believe, like truly, one of the best things about me coaching is being able to share where I've came from. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and just being able to bounce back from that. The biggest thing that I going to preach is, overcoming adversity and just perseverance. That's something that I feel very strongly about. I feel like there's nothing, yeah, you can come back from anything. And not to like brag, I feel like in some ways I'm just a resemblance of that being true. So one of these days I'm going to build this thing enough and you guys are going to want to have me on.
you can come on tomorrow. I don't care. Well,
Yeah,
not literally
yeah,
tomorrow. I
but
think
yeah,
we
yeah,
already
yeah.
have a guest, but in 8 days
Mhm,
you can come on the Coaching 101 podcast.
yeah,
That's absolutely great. It's
mhm,
fine by us. Um, I love what you said about perseverance, and we teach
yeah,
resilience is big, and that's something that a lot of humans don't have right now. We're in this age of crisis, or everything is the worst thing that ever happened every single day, and as a society, we're kind of lost right now, and having people that will continue the fight of resiliency and just hard stuff happens, but you better get over it
yeah,
and move on because the next day might bring the
hmm,
next worst thing you've ever had to deal with, and that's something that I'm trying to put
yeah,
into my kids, our players, other coaches. Um, we talk about being adaptable. My wife, I talked about earlier, she's a physical therapist. We opened our own PT clinic last year, just about 13 months old now, but it's called Adaptable Physical Therapy.
yeah,
That's the name of our company. That's our brand. That's who we are as humans. We want to be adaptable, resilient, the ability to answer the
hmm,
call no matter what. So when there's prime examples that like you that shine and can get out there to the community and continue preaching that, like I'm all for it, dude. I want to prop you up. I want to put you out there with the greats because that's what
yeah.
we need as
I,
a
I
society
really do
right now,
appreciate
unfortunately.
that. One of these days, I've been told this quite a few times. It's actually been over like the last year, and it's really made me think. One of these days I'm going to get into like motivational speaking of like going around and like talking to high school kids, and I've been told that would be a good, future thing for me to try and get into. So I've kind of held myself. I don't know when that'll be or
Yeah,
how that's going to go about, but that's a goal of mine of being able to go kind of just spread the message that I have, if you will. But yeah,
you're
yeah,
alive at the perfect time,
yeah,
man. Technology lets you do all that, and you don't need to wait until you're 50 years old to go tell people
yeah,
your story
yeah.
anymore. Like, people are very accepting of, like, there's people out there that
Mhm.
have a story to tell, and the hard times don't fall on you
Yeah,
when you're 35 sometimes. Sometimes they fall
yeah.
on you when you're 5, right? And so we all have a
Mhm.
different path. So kudos to you, man. Yeah, chase it, man. Chase those
Well, I
dreams for sure.
appreciate you. Thank you for coming in. And if you're tuning in, thank you for checking out the BA Coaches Show. I'll see you guys next week.